I want to say thank you for also the customers joining. We have Jordan Jones from Cisco. We've got Flavio Villanustre.
Yeah, that's correct.
Awesome. And by the way, I used to say that you don't have to be a brain surgeon to use our software, and then I found out that Flavio is actually a brain surgeon about 5 minutes ago. Exactly. Alan Stickler from McKesson Health, so maybe you guys can talk afterwards. And his father-in-law is a brain surgeon. And then Stuart Burke, who's from Nomura Holdings. It's a pleasure to be here, and I've already had discussions with these guys about what we want to talk about, so we hope this is interactive in the sense that you guys get a lot of ideas for what you can do with Alfresco, and a lot of feedback around how these guys are using the solution. So I'm going to start with some questions. We've got 7 questions, and then we're going to have a summary. We're going to have a discussion around 20-60-20, and then at the end, I'm going to have a little contest I'll propose to you guys, and we'll see where that goes. Okay? So, Jordan, is it okay if I start with you?
Sure.
About how you're using Alfresco now and how it's helping your business?
So we're just getting started with Alfresco. We have launched our production pilot. We have about 50 users of our projected 50,000 users. We have engineering data, so design, documentation, and so forth in a kind of ancient homegrown system that we need to modernize and so forth. We did an evaluation of competing products and really like the open nature of your product. And additionally, as we're starting to try to figure out the funding around doing that, both to buy the product and also to do our customizations, the sales team came to us and said, we need a way to really enable our sales team, get them the right information about our products in a timely fashion, have them know that information was up to date, valid, is the way we want to position the product, and so forth. Today, things are scattered all over the website, and they might be out of date, and so forth. And so we're building a sales enablement platform with specific workflows for the sales content. We also are thinking of the content in ways that are beyond what we've done in our other systems. So we have a concept of a virtual document that's actually a URL of some other resource that we aren't storing in Alfresco, but will be available to people. We'll go through the workflows, be approved, and then this might be a link to training that's in our learning management system or something else. But it's something that the sales team can know has been vetted, is up to date, will come off the website when it expires, and so forth. So building process.
Instead of sending all these documents around, they'll just get the link and the metadata around it, up to date.
Yeah, so
readily available,
the metadata around it will be searchable. It'll be available to them, pushed out to Salesforce. It'll also be available on the website to the people with the right entitlement, and it'll be available through to their mobile apps in a variety of ways.
It's great. All through Salesforce application on mobile app as well, or?
Salesforce mobile app as well as a custom mobile app that we're building.
Cool.
And then we're working on the website to make that a little bit more mobile friendly.
Awesome. Great. Mr. Brain Surgeon, our own private NSA in a way. Can you explain how you use the Alfresco and the 10 million documents put in there? And
We've been using Alfresco for some time now, for maybe 4 years or so. We migrated out of another enterprise content management system that I used to use. We have a variety of applications that we use it for. One of those has to do with some human workflows on product-related documents. We have certain products that are data-driven products where we provide these data-driven services to companies, and in the process of doing this, we have some human workflows going behind the scenes, moving documents, faxes, and other multimedia documents too. And we need to keep track of this process, and we need to make sure that we know the provenance of every document. We can find those documents properly. So we use Alfresco for this solution, which is purely internal. In addition to that, we also move our external-facing content for sales and for marketing to an Alfresco repository as well. These are both hosted in our own data centers. These are in our own premise, not in the cloud. And we are also moving a number of miscellaneous repositories currently on a semi-competing product, Microsoft SharePoint, into Alfresco as well. We successfully moved several of those. And I say successfully moved because it was seamless pretty much for the users. The biggest resistance is normally the users themselves who don't want to get moved because of the hassle of moving to a different repository. But once they go through the process, they understand that there is no harm, and they get a number of additional features that they didn't have before. Security and access controls around those repositories is a critical one for us.
Fantastic. Great. So, Alan, how about the medical information, use of Drupal and everything?
So our main use right now for Alfresco is as a content authoring tool. We have, as part of the Obama healthcare reform laws related to meaningful use, there's a requirement to enable patients to have access to their medical records. And so when we looked at that opportunity beyond just the minimum requirements, we thought there was a great opportunity to help patients get access to relevant clinical content and relevant patient content. We also support, or we own the largest and most well-read oncology or cancer patient magazine up in Dallas, or down in Dallas from here, called Cure Magazine.
You're from Boston, too.
I know, but I've been in the South for a while. So taking that content and looking at that as, looking at the Cure Magazine website, looking at our patient portal, and looking at different properties. So we wanted to create one content management system. It was actually the smallest of the circles of use cases for Alfresco, but on the web content management side, building one repository for bringing everything in, pulling in content from ACS and other external sources, our internal sources, and then Cure Magazine, and being able to personalize and create custom content solutions for each of these properties based on the medical conditions of the patients coming in. So that's our main use case, and then...
So wait a minute, let me get this right. So the patient, they have a condition, when they log in with their credentials, it's going to serve up what's relevant to them.
So they'll be able to get content relevant to the type of drugs they're on, the type of treatments that they're having, potentially the types of symptoms they may be seeing and how to deal with those, things that have been documented. So we're tracking HIPAA consent to use information to bring relevant information to them.
Wow.
To give them, cancer treatment's obviously a pretty difficult time for people, and even at different stages when you're diagnosed is very different from when you're recovering afterwards. And so each of those, it gives us sort of a different view of the cancer journey. We want to be able to give relevant content to them at that point of care.
Someone asked a question about data changing the world. I think you guys are finding a way to make that happen, which is awesome. Stuart, research.
Yeah, so we do
financials,
and we do research. So our solution is essentially publications, creation of research publications, and the workflow, compliance and legal requirements around that. We serve 2 languages, primarily Japanese and English. We do about 4,000 documents a month, going out to about 80,000 clients. The platform was basically built from scratch. We've been on Alfresco for about 4 years, I think. We're fairly early adopters. And we went into a very greenfield sort of site with Nomura, where they really didn't have a lot of anything. And so we had to basically go from scratch. Now, again, our platform is mostly driven around model language workflows and document management and document retention. So we have a lot of compliance regulations around keeping track of not just what documents we did, but everything we did to those documents, from creation, who did it, when they did it, how it was done, right up until the point where they're released. And we need to hang on to that for anywhere between 3 to 7 years.
Fantastic. Thank you. So guys, you heard us talk about the 20-60-20 inside an organization. Could be 5-95, could be 10-80-10, whatever your percentage is. Can you explain a little about how maybe your organization is hitting that and experiencing that, and where do you think you're at in terms of applications and storage, and of course on the back end of that, content? I mean, is this relevant in your space? How are you thinking about it? How are the hippos thinking about it? How are the geeks thinking about it? What's it look like? Can you start? Can you help us out?
Sure. So, from a healthcare perspective, we're always worried about HIPAA compliance, people's personal and safety of their health information. We actually look for lots of ways at each layer to make sure that we're protecting the identity of the patient, their condition, and everything else. I think, so McKesson's a very risk-averse organization. I think usage of, in the cloud is sort of a new adoption for us. We're starting to look at it. We have started to look at opportunities where it's not critical path, where it's not something dealing with the patient's health or dealing with their opportunities potentially, content sites, things that are external to sort of the patient concern, and starting to go down that path, but that's pretty new for us in the McKesson space, actually.
Okay, all right, cool. Jordan, can you help out here?
Sure. So at Cisco, initially people were very resistant to the idea, especially the hippos.
Maybe people that used to work there? Just kidding. Our cloud guy now. That's right. He's changed entirely. I think I might not survive today. It's nice knowing you guys. I'm sorry.
Actually, I will say that WebEx was part of that transformation,
Absolutely.
where people could see inside the company, here's a cloud product that we have, and here's how it's helping people be successful. And so now we have evaluations. Anytime somebody wants to do something externally with a cloud provider, we go through a security audit of what that cloud provider has, what they can give us in terms of security, what the kind of data is, how much of a percentage of all of that kind of data is going out there. So it's easier to do a smaller implementation. It's easier to do an implementation that is about post-sales data that maybe belongs on the web anyway, than our initial design documentation that may be the crown jewels of the next product we're going to build.
Cool.
So they're evaluating what we're doing with it, as well as what the benefits and risks are.
Okay, great. Could you help us
Yeah,
out,
sure.
Fabio?
Yeah, public cloud is obviously a very interesting proposition. Unfortunately, the vast majority, we are a very large data aggregator. We aggregate petabytes, terabytes of personal identifiable information around consumers in the US. So you can imagine that we are bound by almost every regulation and law around data in the US, as you can see. So HIPAA applies to some of the data we have, and so does GLBA, DPPA, FCRA, and I can go on and on and on, a long list. Of course, for the most part, there are still risks on putting any of this data on the cloud, and we are also a very risk-averse company. So we are not considering cloud for this type of data repositories. We host them all in our premises. We all put a lot of controls around this data. This includes access controls. This includes data destruction practices and policies. This includes even physical controls around the data centers and others. But there are a number of documents and data elements that can be hosted in the cloud. So, and I mentioned it before, for some of the things we even built our own external facing content repository using Alfresco to handle some of these. And I'm not saying that eventually we might not be able to move some of these things to a cloud-based environment as well. So this is a transition, and we are walking this road as we move. But there are a number of safety measures that we need to have in place in order to be able to do that without taking too much risk.
Great, thank you so much. Stuart.
Okay, in our business, I guess we have two conflicting requirements around this. We have our compliance department, which is very, very, very conservative and all about making sure that our pre-public information doesn't get out. So basically preventing problems such as insider trading and all those sort of wonderful scandals that you read about in the newspapers. On the other side, we have analysts who want to write whenever they are in planes or sitting still in airports or just basically when any kind of downtime whatsoever, but they're not connected to our networks. And we also have translators who are a kind of a fluctuating resource. And so we don't have all of our translators in-house. We have a lot of them working as externals. And we need to be able to send that same pre-public information to our translators and get it back. Again, both situations are ideal for a cloud implementation, but we are governed by all the sort of restrictions that we have to put in place around keeping that information very secure and very tight. One of the nice things about the Alfresco product, we haven't quite got it in place yet, but it actually meets all the sort of financial requirements around encryption and security. So again, we are looking very hard at that at the moment. So we have a very strong use case for it on both creation and distribution. However, we just haven't quite got the mechanics of it worked out with our legal department yet. So.
I understand. Quickly, I want to go through 3 more questions, and I think you guys know where we want to kind of end up. But just from a records management point of view, because we talked about the cloud and what could be possibly put out there, and you've touched upon the legal requirements already. But treating something as a record different than just maintaining and holding something. Can you speak a little bit about where you're at with that and how you guys confront that whole issue of making something a record?
So historically at Cisco, there have been two kinds of things. One is documents that are retained forever because people felt they needed to retain them forever, and then documents that are retained forever because nobody thought anything about it.
Yeah.
So
typical. So typical.
So now we're starting to put records management around some of our systems, and that's one of the key things. The initial launch of Alfresco at Cisco, we've told people it's a production pilot, and one of the reasons is we don't want to launch it until we have ISO compliance certified by our internal ISO team, that they would be able to pass an ISO audit pointing at this system, and also records management in place so that we're not building another system that doesn't have that set up from the get-go. We want to retain the records that we need only for as long as we need them, and we want to be able to use legal hold to say, this one we need to hang on to longer because of legal restrictions or a particular case or whatever.
Smart move.
Yeah, in our case, well, I'll go back to the regulatory pitch as well. Yeah. But what makes it worse is that many of these dimensions that need to control when data is acquired, when data is disposed, how you dispose that data, are orthogonal. So you might have the business need to, of course, retain this data forever because I can use it for a future product. You might have the regulatory requirement to keep that data for only 7 years, FCRA compliance. You might have a legal hold because you have an ongoing lawsuit, and you might need to hold the data for now, even if you went beyond the 7 years. You might have, customer requirements, contractor requirements. So this becomes a very, very complex problem in a very little amount of time. And of course, we need to comply and track every one of these dimensions for every data record. This is a big challenge.
Didn't you say in Russia at 75 years you have to hold?
What we've been told contractually in our agreements with the Russian Federation is stuff we sell directly to them. We have to have the user documentation and anything we provide to customers for 75 years after the sale. Which seems to be about the length of the Soviet Union.
Exactly.
So
that's where it comes from.
75 years is about as long as the revolution lasts. So
this Stalin record management role.
We need to keep the records that long, and then we'll have something new.
Perfect. I love it.
From a web content perspective, there are some components to record management in terms of, compliance. We talk about drugs. There's certain regulations that we have to instill when we receive data from drugs. We have certain requirements that we have to fulfill. But actually, since you came by, we are pursuing another initiative around our clinical trials management system.
Yes.
It's actually a good business case for us because it allows us to take what documents that are being sent, literally in FedEx envelopes across the country, put them into a management system and put an e-signature on there, and then actually collect that information. But that's going to really change the way that we do our clinical trial management system. Cool. And potentially will actually expedite not just financially, but also in terms of time about getting drugs through our system and getting approved. So
right on. Cool. We did talk about that just a few months ago.
Just when you joined. It was great.
That is so cool. I'm happy. That's great. Awesome.
I think similar to the other guys, we've got the same sort of record retention requests. Again, it varies depending on what country you're in, anywhere from sort of 3 or we don't care out to 7 or out to forever. But I mean, the other side of it is not just you've got to hang on to it, is when the regulators come into a bank, they don't give you a lot of time to get it back together. It's not as if you can just put it in the filing cabinet somewhere and forget about it. You get, for instance, in Japan, if a regulator comes in, you get a 12-hour turnaround. They will come in and ask you for everything for the last 2 years. You've got 12 hours to show up. If you don't show up with it 12 hours later, it's like you've already missed like step 1 of your 6-month audit. And guess what? Your 6-month audit has just become 12 months. So it's that kind of return and that kind of ability to retrieve the records, which is also a really big part of what we have to do. And again, since putting in our system, we've actually been able to really turn that turnaround around. And again, an audit used to be all hands on deck, we're all panicking, stop all work and get those files together. Now it's essentially it's a quick query to the document repository, and here's the zip file. Just go away, guys, and let us get on with it.
Good. Glad we can help.
Yeah, it's
been
awesome. a big uptick.
Sweet. So the next question is going to be, okay, if Alfresco could build anything for you, coupled with who do you think the thought leaders are in our content management space? So think about, who do you view as thought leadership in the content management space? And if Alfresco could build anything for you, what would that look like? And I'm assuming, I'm hoping anyway, it's also in line with this whole transition of just 20-60-20 and where you see the world going. So just whoever wants to take a stab at this. Thought leadership, and if we could build anything for you, what would it be?
So at Cisco, there's currently over 60,000 mobile devices that have appeared organically. So people have their own iPads, their own Android devices. They're connecting to our network, and they're using those to do their jobs. And so people are out in the field, and they can pull stuff up on their Android and so forth. It's all done over the VPN, but it happened organically. And we need to support those users and also make sure that we have the right level of security. So improved security, improved mobile, and improved ability for people to interactively author. And so one of the competitors, I would say, is Google Docs. At least once a week, one of my clients asks me, can I have Google Docs-like functionality, inline collaborative real-time editing within Alfresco? And I have to tell them, not yet.
Okay. No, that's great. No, look, hippo, anti-hippo. We want feedback. This is what we want. This is what this is all about. That's why we have a customer panel. This is good stuff. It's great stuff. Good save.
Just got your job back.
I did. I think I saved it for another month. Flavio.
Well, I wouldn't call them thought leaders. I would say that our people, our employees and customers tend to go through the path of least resistance, and you're probably all familiar with that. So some of the file share, public source-based file share offerings tend to be quite pervasive across general usage. And you can put any names there. I don't consider them enterprise content management systems because they lack a significant amount of features, but that doesn't mean that they are not being prevalent and being used widely, which exposes other risks as well, because this might create a gray IT type of area where people are moving documents that might be sensitive into a place where they might not be having the proper custodians in place and the proper controls in place. So that's an area of concern for us. That's why we are trying to funnel all this through another path of least resistance, which is through some of the Alfresco repositories that we are building. If I was to ask one feature that I think would be quite important for us in the transition towards a more cloud-based environment, I would say probably DLP integration, data loss protection integration with Alfresco and some of the well-known players in the area. That would help us control which documents flow towards the cloud environment and which documents don't flow, and put some well-defined rules there. Of course, we do this across the company in many other areas, but the fact that we don't have something like this well implemented and integrated with Alfresco means that considering an Alfresco repository outside of the boundaries of the organization is a little bit difficult today.
Thank you.
In terms of leaders in the space, especially on the web content side, we work very closely with Acquia as well and integration with Drupal. So I think Dries is really pushing the boundaries over there. I think the new Drupal 8 does a really good job of looking at some of those things. Now, it doesn't solve the whole problem, and that's really why we came to Alfresco, was to help us solve that authoring problem that I think Drupal deals with in a very different way. Carrie McGrain did a great talk at DrupalCon this year about sort of divergence from the blob to the blocks, and talking about how and really this is what we're using Alfresco for, is taking this large content areas and turning it into structured content.
Cool.
Because as we move to mobile, as we move to new devices, whether it's Google Glass or Google Watch or whatever it is, that's going to change the industry, and it's going to change how we deliver content. So I think that's, those are the people on the website that's going to change the world that I think Alfresco really has a big input for. So.
This is great. Doug is taking notes furiously over there. I love it. This is fantastic. Stuart?
From our side, if I started with if there was one thing that we could build that would make my life easier, it's kind of something more aimed at that, and if I understand the terminology, are the hippos, the guys that you have to convince that Alfresco is a good idea. In our space, I went from people who basically printed their reports and wrote on them with red pens, and then passed them to the next person and wrote on them with red pens, and the last person typed it all back up again, starting. Convincing those people what a workflow system is was kind of hard, because they just didn't have it in their head. what would have been really helpful was a little bit more plug and play, like just drag things around on the screen and have it all very quickly kind of flow together. Now, at the risk of doing myself out of a job, if the business can, or my users can do that themselves, then what do they need me for? But yeah, there is a limit. But being able to get that initial proof of concept demonstration up a lot faster with those guys would be a big plus on our side.
Excellent, guys. Thank you so much for that feedback. Can I put that slide up, please? So we have a little contest we'd like to kick out there. You can go ahead and build the slide out. So what we'd like to do is you can email me at that email address there, sort of your why. You know, I look at these IT projects and I see that there's a what, you know, we're going to implement this thing. There's a when, we're going to do it this year. There's a where, we're going to do it in America and maybe we're going to actually roll it out globally afterwards. And then there's a who. It's like this guy's going to do it and that's from the business. And when you get that all on a screen and you're sitting down in a room looking at the project, those 4 blocks crowd out that little small thing in the middle, which is the why. Why are you going to do this? What's the point of it? And sometimes, me too, you know, I forget the why. I know what I want to do, I know when and where and who, but I forget the why. So we got some whys up here, you know, a little bit transferred from what are we doing in 2060-20, what are we doing, what's thought leadership look like, what could you build me? If you guys could just email me, anybody can do this, come back and tell us what your why is, right, in this 2060-20. Like, why would you want to investigate hybrid? What would it add to your business? And me, Doug, a couple other people in the company will sit down. We're going to pick 3 companies, and we're going to give you 20 hours of free consulting. And then we're hoping that next year you come back and talk about your why and what you're doing with your content. Okay? So with that, I just want to give one last thing to these guys and say thank you. Red Sox. I'm not good with sports, guys, so I got the name right. Red Sox. Doug said to me the other day, we're going to have to do an audible on this. And I'm like, what is an audible? It's a football term, I think. I've lived in Europe way too long. Anyway, this is a Red Sox jersey to commemorate where we're at. You could trade in the size if you want to give it to your sons or daughters or whatnot. So thank you very much for joining us up here on stage. And give these guys a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.